step is absent if you apply a rigorous standard. But also regarding the 3D section, clearly the TRIPS agreement does allow member countries to determine what kind of definition they use for novelty, inventive step, and industrial applicability. And this is right that India has applied, and many countries can follow the same approach. The only requirement under the TRIPS agreement is to apply this type of requirements, but there is no definition contained, and therefore what India is doing, other countries can do, is legitimate under the TRIPS agreement. I just wanted to mention, because I thought I had more time, but one of the reasons why TRIPS flexibilities are not used in many cases is also because there are still strong pressures by developed countries in connection with the use of such flexibilities. For instance, if you look at the special Section 301 report, which is produced by USTR every year, you will find a number of countries which are listed in this famous list, the watch list, so on and so forth, because they are not providing some type of protection that is required by the United States, but which is not required under the TRIPS agreement. And this is also one of the reasons why many developing countries are afraid of coming and using these flexibilities. I'm just providing here on the slide one part of the text of the US law, which relates to special Section 301, which indicates that this section may be applied even in cases where countries comply with the TRIPS agreement. So there's a clear indication that this special section will be enforced through threats of retaliations, even when there is compliance with the TRIPS agreement. And this is clearly not a positive message to countries, and not something that will promote the use of the flexibilities as allowed and confirmed by the Doha Declaration.
Thank you. Carlos, any other panelists? Yes, Jamie.
Partly in response to what some of the other panelists said, I think that the political problem is bigger than the legal problem. If you take even the worst FTA agreements that have been signed, you can still issue all kinds of compulsory license if you have the political will to do it. The problem has to be really the belief people have that that's somehow going to create problems, that that's something that's frowned upon, you're going to have to pay for that in other sectors of your economy, in other parts of your, or even foreign policy considerations. So I think that's kind of the thing that's the biggest problem in terms of the access to medicine issue. And that's why I really think it's important that we recognize that the current system of fighting for flexibility in trade agreements, which is absolutely necessary in the present, and we have to worry about the construction of these legal barriers and things like that. At the end of the day, it really is going to resolve something that's much more important than just the legal thing. It's just a real basic, a more sustainable political agreement that it's unacceptable that the majority of the world's population will be facing prices they can't afford for drugs which are really important to them. That it's completely unacceptable that most new cancer drugs today are absolutely unaffordable to people who have cancer throughout the world, that the next generation of AIDS drugs or drugs for hepatitis or a million other diseases are essentially a thing, and that the policies that are implemented, they have to actually be consistent with the lofty goals of the Doha Declaration. The language of the Doha Declaration is useful because it sets out what should be the case, which is that you should have a system that's consistent with access to medicine for all. The problem has been the absolute failure of governments to implement those in a really good faith way. And it may be that and that's why we have focused a lot on these ideas of the R&D treaty, or replacing monopolies with prizes, or things like that, which are kind of radical reforms of the business model and the trade framework for how you think about paying for innovation. Because I think if you don't unlock that riddle, if you don't de-link those two things, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And Sonia's talk and Michelle's talk together, I mean, you know, it's, if anything, it's even worse than they said, you know, which is already like, you know, like practically cutting your wrist, right? You know, so it's like, that's the future we don't want to have. But to avoid it, there has to be like a real feasible route to get out of the direction we're going in. We have to wake up and realize that we have to step it up a bit. We have to do this year and next year what people did 10 years ago when they were really moving